Great. So welcome everybody. Erev Tov. So happy to see you all. And I'll start by sharing the blessing, and we'll dive straight in because I know there'll be lots to talk about. We could bless the head of state, but I think we'll bless Torah tonight. So I just invite you to take a breath and find your seat in this space of really the opportunity to gather ourselves in preparation for Pesach. The Torah says that three-fourths, 75% of Jewish life really is mostly about preparation. So I just really welcome us all into that space of really getting ready so that when we are at the shore of the sea, we know what to do. So here we go. Welcome, Sophia and Julius. What a cool name. Are you Julius or Sophia?
I'm Sophia. My husband is Julius. He's off camera for the moment, but he'll
Wonderful.
join.
What a cool name, Julius. All right, here we go, everybody. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Great, and the concept here is to really la'asok, to find ourselves. I always translate that as to be kind of soaked in, but it's literally to be busy with, to be engaged with, to wrestle in and amongst. So it's a very active proposal, the idea of learning Torah. Great. All right. So a little bit of backdrop to the conversation that many of us began last week. And I'll just share with you kind of the concept, and we'll open it up and see if anyone has had any kind of precipitating thoughts since then. What we're thinking about is two frames: the frame of freedom from, and we could kind of mad lib all the list of things that we are freedom froming. And I'll just kind of pause for a moment, just for you to kind of take that in. Personally, freedom from, what are we leaving this year? And freedom to. And it's really, Judaism is very much about these kind of bookend or liminal experiences in order to really create a gray, or to create a fractal. In Talmud, we look for the crack, and often the polarity between two ends of something, whether it's lighting the candles, Erev Shabbat, and Havdalah at the end, kind of focus us on the center place. So too, these kind of themes of freedom from and freedom to kind of ask us to dwell in between. But we have to get there somehow. So I'll just pause there for a moment and share with you the initial frame that we looked at last week, and then we'll kind of we'll dive in. So we looked at this idea of there being arba kosot, 4 cups of wine. And speaking of liminality, wine is very good for the liminal, and it's a great elevator for obscuring or tilting our perspective. So we're moving from Purim, where we're also kind of a mitzvah is to drink, to Pesach, where we're still drinking, because these are very, oh, look, Martha's drinking. L'chaim, Martha. It was so on cue. Couldn't have planned that better. L'chaim, really to life and to health and to joy. So we on Pesach have these 4 cups of wine as a bit of an elevator. And the reason for that is the Kabbalists refer to these as 4 rungs of shell or defilement that the Israelites had to overcome in order to be redeemed. That our years in Egypt had taken us down to the lowest spiritual rungs, and we basically climbed up rung by rung in order to leave. So I'll pause there to just allow everybody to take that in. I know, you might have been microwaving dinner before this and not quite ready for Kabbalah straight in, but there we go. So any digests or landings of where that meets you? Hi, Katie. Good to see you. I don't think I've met you. Lovely to see you. Linda and
Rabbi Solomon,
yes.
What comes up for me, you're talking of rungs, and we talk of, rungs on a ladder, or I'm not quite sure, but what came up for me is comparing it to during Elul, when we talk to the spiral and kind of going deeper and deeper into something, or going around but coming back to the spot but at another level. So I'm just playing with the contrast of these two metaphors that come up. And I don't have an answer, but that just is what comes up for me.
Yeah, totally brilliant. Baruch Shekevanta. Blessed is the one who directs you to sort of give you that insight. That's awesome. And what you'll begin to notice, especially in studying the Jewish cycles with me, is that I love patterns, and I look for them. Could be the artist in me or the poet, who knows where, but there are many, and you're spot on. So Janine's referring to the preparation for Rosh Hashanah, the cycle of Elul, and immediately following Pesach will end up in another one of those circles or spirals or rungs, the counting of the Omer. So yeah, great mention. Martha, is that a hand or just a?
No, that's just a nothing.
Okay, cool. It's a something. All right, great. So let's dive into freedom 2, because we need something to look forward to. And I'll just as a way to get there, let me just show you, and I'm happy to send anyone my source sheet. The structure that we used last week was looking at 3 specific symbols on the Seder plate. So here's our Seder plate. And basically this is our history lesson right here on this plate. And so what we looked at were 3 symbols that I thought really captured uniquely this idea of freedom from. So we looked at Maror, and we studied a piece of Zohar about the exile of speech, and Pesach, literally meaning the open mouth and the return of speech. I'm doing this in a micro little review. So if you want the real deal, I'm happy to go back, or Jody shared that there's a video. And then we looked at the salt water, and we studied a piece of Sfat Emet about crying, which I continue to be obsessed with after years, especially having now a baby daughter and listening to her cry all the time. I'm like obsessed. And then we looked at the symbol of the shank bone. And we talked, and I thought this was really powerful, and this stayed with me from last week. We talked about what would be our shank bone, or what would be the tool with which we marked our doorposts this year. And folks talked about a mask and, kind of a marking that says enough already, Dayenu. Okay, so let's move now to, does anybody have any thoughts, or like you really want to know something or ask somebody else who was there last week about one of those symbols? You just can't keep it in?
Not about those symbols, but I am
Yeah.
a little bit curious about you just used the term Dayenu in the context of saying like enough,
Yeah.
as opposed to the way that I'm used to hearing Dayenu is this like very like, oh no, you don't need to do anymore. Like that would have been enough, right? And so
Right.
that seems kind of in contrast to me. So I'm curious if there are other applications to Dayenu that I don't know.
Yeah. Awesome question. Hi, Julius. I was wondering if Sophia was you, but clearly you are you. So happy to see you. Yeah, so Dayenu, Day, literally means enough. And it's actually a bit terrifying because if you're ever at a playground in Israel, you hear parents screaming at their children, die, die, die. It's a little jolting, but it literally means enough for us, Dayenu. And so you're right, Sophia, there is the kind of song that you might know of, it would have been enough had God taken us out. It would have been enough had God given us the Torah. And those things are all true. And Dayenu is also kind of a spiritual practice, I would say, of sorts, in that, recognizing that we ourselves are enough, that what we have is enough. I mean, we learn in Pirkei Avot that who is happy is one with their portion. So the idea of kind of assessing our lot and being grateful for what is. And Judaism has a lot of kind of hard to digest moments that we say enough about. I'm thinking particularly of, when a person dies, our response is a ceremonial kind of full stop response. And I say ceremonial because it's a pattern. We are told exactly what to say upon the death of someone, which is Baruch Dayan Ha'amet. Blessed is the judge of truth. So that too is a bit of a Dayenu moment. Like we not accept, that's too mushy, but we process what is, we meet what is. What do you hear in it for you, especially for this year, this idea of Dayenu?
I definitely feel like I've had enough of this past year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you speaking on that a little bit. Thank you for giving us some more
Yeah.
meat than I thought there.
Yeah. And we talked last time, I have this little matzah crown behind me because it's Pesach it's a little bit like Carnival in Brazil. There's a flip, there's a two-sidedness that's very thin, which is the example of matzah would be matzah is both the bread of slavery, literally what we had to make, and the bread of freedom, what we could make. And it's a very thin line. And so too is Dayenu, right? It's enough rain for us, and hopefully not drought for somebody else. So there's a polarity, I would say, there with the Dayenu. It's not a la Dayenu. It's a complicated one. Yeah. Any other thoughts about Dayenu? That's a very cool place to kind of, yeah, Emily, please. Oops,
I'd like to say something about that. That when we go around at the Seder, I think that will be a really interesting question to ask everybody. What is enough for you? What is enough for the community? What is enough for the world, etc. And one word comes to my mind for me is anxiety.
Mhm.
I just felt the whole year's been so full of anxiety that that would be the word for me. And I would say, I've had enough, you know.
Yeah,
So I think that's a good point to bring out to the family Seder.
absolutely. Yeah, and even anxiety, Joanne, I would say for all of us, you know, anxiety is energy. It's anticipation. It's I've never had to share personally, I've never had more anxiety than I have as a parent now. I don't even think I knew what anxiety was, to be totally honest. And I feel like I have a whole new relationship, but I'm kind of exploring it really as energy, as inertia. I'm going to put in the chat also an article that I wrote. Joanne, you reminded me of kind of tips for the Seder or helpful tools. So this is an article I did a couple years ago. Okay, good. So let us take ourselves now to freedom 2 and really think together about where is it that we are desiring to go with this opportunity here. And let me share screen. Okay. So I want to give you a moment to put into the chat a story of a struggle for freedom that you've witnessed this year. Or maybe even to kind of point that a little bit more, the specific call for freedom that you've heard. What is it? What is the freedom 2 that you've seen this year? We've seen a lot of them. I'm gonna look in the, yeah, Martha, go ahead. Black Lives Matter in the chat. Yep, absolutely.
Martha, you're muted.
Okay. The most blatant one is people who claim a freedom to not wear a mask.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. You know, that just hits me almost every day.
Yeah. Yeah. And Deborah put in the chat, immigrants, the struggle for freedom there of just being able to move globally around the world, continued democracy, right? A big moment in our American consciousness, people fighting for their right to vote again after how many years, right? So these are some freedom 2s. And if you have one that you're after this year, you can go ahead and put that in the chat as well. What is it that, what is it that you want to be free to do this year? That's particular really to you, have the opportunity to take a swing at, to participate in, to create. And it's really in thinking about, not just the freedom from, but also the freedom to, this is my hypothesis or whatever, that we get there. And of course, Jewishly, what we're thinking about freedom to is really the wander post-Egypt to then Sinai, right? So we're going to immediately after leaving Egypt, the second night of Seder, we start counting our way up to Sinai, to the holiday of Shavuot. So it's not just a colloquial Hebrew, we would say it's not just a stam, it's not just a kind of afterthought of freedom. Okay, we're no longer slaves to Pharaoh. It's freedom to then receive Torah and to be Jews. Freedom from worshiping Pharaoh to freedom to worshiping God. So let's go ahead and look at 3 symbols again. And here's a typical Seder plate. I mean, I don't think there actually is a typical Seder plate. It was probably made in the sand or something. But there's a beautiful one. Reminds me of the old city in Jerusalem. And we'll look at charosets. So what we're going to do here, just as a kind of scaffold, is look at 3 particular symbols on the Seder plate. So we're going to look at charosets, the egg, and karpas. Okay, so charosets, the apples, betza, the egg, and karpas, the green crunchy, whether it's parsley or something yummy, crudité. Okay, so let's take ourselves to charosets. Does somebody want to go ahead and read the verse from the Song of Songs? And Song of Songs is one of the Megillot that is associated, the Megillah associated with Pesach. So it's typical on the night of Seder to stay up after you've stayed up for the Seder to read Shir HaShirim. So if anybody is in need of some juicy love poetry, I highly recommend Shir HaShirim. Okay, so let's go ahead and read this verse. Does somebody, Julius, do you want to read this verse from Song of Songs?
Sure. Is it just this one right here?
Italics.
Oh, okay. Yeah. As the apple is rare and unique among the trees of the forest, so is my beloved Israel amongst the maidens, nation of the world. Song of Songs.
Awesome. Great. So the idea is this comparison between Song of Songs is really a love song between us and God. And this kind of courting dance, I would say, in our relationship with God. And it's a very sensuous, just open-hearted, very nature-based kind of dance between these energies of beloved and beloved. Has anybody had any associations with Song of Songs or studied it in any way? No, not yet, not yet. All right, it's a great one. Okay, so then, Sophia, if you want to kind of respond to that verse with this piece of text from the Talmud. So just to position it, the Talmud is going to grab onto that particular verse that Julius just read and draw a connection to Passover and the imagery around Egypt. So go for it.
Thanks. We're dealing with a dog on the lap situation, so I apologize for the shaky cam.
Love it.
Rabbi Awira expounded, as the reward for the righteous women of who lived in that generation were the Israelites delivered from Egypt. When they went to draw water, the Holy One, blessed be they, arranged that small fishes should enter their pitchers, which they drew up half full of water and half full of fishes. Then they set 2 pots on the fire, one for hot water and the other for fish. The women carried these pitchers to their husbands in the field and washed, anointed, fed, gave them to drink, and made love with them among the sheepfolds. After the women conceived, they returned to their homes, and when the time of childbirth arrived, they went and were delivered in the field beneath the apple trees. Under the apple tree I caused thee to come forth from my mother's womb. Talmud Bavli Sotah.
Awesome. Page 11, the second side, side B. So this is one of my most favorite text. But before I speak to it, what are you all hearing? The image is of these pretty hardcore women who had an agenda and made something happen, and went to the fields with 2 pitchers, water and fish. And what's the context to this? What was supposed to happen? What were these women responding to? Yeah, Rob.
You'd think it would be the edict that all Hebrew males were to be killed, prior to their leaving. I mean, the freedom to bear children and not to fear that they were going to be, killed.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wonderfully put. The freedom to bear children and responding to the edict in Egypt that there should be no male children. And there's a wonderful story right next to this page in the Talmud of Miriam, who says to her parents, because Miriam was the oldest, and no one was having sex in Egypt because of this edict. I mean, I don't know, no one, but people were not. And Miriam said to her parents, get on with it. Because the idea of, not procreating basically is even more astringent than the edict itself. To not procreate would mean to not have girl children or boy children or any children. And so it's above and beyond that edict. And then Moses is born. So what do you make of this? It's oh yeah, Judy, I see both of your hands.
All 3 of them.
Oh, nice.
Thank you. This is one of my very favorite stories from just decades back about Miriam, and she was only 5 years old at the time.
Yeah.
Saying to her parents, this is no good. What you're doing is worse than what Pharaoh did. Pharaoh would only kill the boy babies, but you're killing the girl babies too. Because if there aren't any babies born, and she was only 5. I just can't get over that because I know a lot of 5-year-olds, and I don't know any 5-year-olds who are as wise as, I guess that's why they called her the prophetess, right? Miriam HaNeviah. And I just love that story of that,
Yeah.
her precocious wisdom.
Absolutely.
And she's responsible for that, knowing that and being able to speak it to her parents and make them take it seriously is, it changed the course of history.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And the imagery here of, the apple tree. So here's where Horositz kind of can potentially take on new meaning for us. One very traditional association is that it is the mortar used in the pyramids. And here we have kind of a bit of a radical reread of the Horositz as being, and it comes from this verse, after the women conceived, they returned to their homes. And when the time of childbirth arrived, they went under the apple trees and basically delivered themselves and each other. So it's a very different kind of imagery around this this mixture of Horositz, that's so crazy delicious, whether you're in Morocco or in China or in LA, the recipes, right, that you can make out of Horositz is insane. And here we have a very much of a freedom to symbol. Any thoughts about that, or your favorite Horositz recipe, or story of someone throwing Horositz across the table? Anything? and it's complicated, right? There's a lot mixed into that charositz. The image of these two pitchers of water, I also really love that that they arranged that the small fishes should enter their pitchers. And then they set these two pots on the fire, one for hot water and one for fish. And they kind of ceremonialized this this reclaiming of sensuality and sexuality in a time when it was off the table. And Pesach is very much, it's spring. It's all of our senses reawakening. The reading of Song of Songs, going out into the fields yet again. There's a lot of freedom too in there. Okay, so let's take ourselves, if anybody has anything to say along the way, you're all so mellow. I think I'm used to people in LA that just like clamor. It still kind of amazes me. All right, so let's go ahead and look together at the next source in this idea of freedom too. And in the chat, just prior to that, I'll have invite you to share if you'd like. What is something that that's been incubating this year and ready to emerge? Anybody have any things that really are on the brink or kind of ready to emerge? Yeah, Emily.
Well, I certainly feel ready to emerge into being with people because
Yeah.
it feels like all that is so pent up. But on a more practical level, I've been really trying to study Spanish, which I've been studying for years, and you'd think I'd be getting further. But so, I feel sort of ready to go talk to someone in real life in Spanish. So, or put that to better use. So,
yeah, fabulous. It takes a lot of dedication, especially as, just over time. Yeah, that's amazing. Very inspiring. Deborah. Very cool. Do you want to read this or, say it?
So I've been spending a lot of time doing watercolors, and I've actually sold quite a few online, and I would love to find a gallery opportunity.
Amazing.
Deborah,
Yes.
are you a member of Maud Kearns?
No, but I'd like to look into that. Maud Kearns?
Are you new to the area?
I am. I moved here in Thanksgiving.
Okay. Look up Maud Kearns, and if you become a member, they have member shows. And it's not that expensive.
Maud, M-A-U-D-E?
Yes, Kearns, and they're very good people.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Pesach, right? Let it emerge, let it come out of our mouths so that we can make it happen. Judy, yep.
I have something really interesting happen to me over the course of the pandemic. This whole last year, when it first started, I kind of went a little bit like, I don't know how long this is going to last, and maybe I'll be cooped up for a long time, and I really ought to like do something really significant and important, and like I could like learn how to cook new meals, and I could learn a foreign language, and I can get all my stuff organized, and then I started paying attention to people who were saying, you're allowed to just deal with the shock and the grief and the loss of the normalcy and the fear. You're allowed to like deal with all this, and you don't have to put any pressure on yourself to like do all these extraordinary things. And for months, I I was just, coping. And now looking back over the last year, I have learned new recipes. I am learning Yiddish, a foreign language. I have been getting my stuff organized. I mean, I've had like just huge breakthroughs in like many different areas of my life that happened. I think the biggest deal of all to me is not learning a foreign language or learning new recipes or getting my life organized. It was like what happened way back in the beginning when I was able to say, no, I'm not going to like surrender to this really evil capitalistic idea that I have to be busy at every moment and that I have to be productive and useful, and I'm allowed to just be, and I'm allowed to just feel. And so that was like the biggest breakthrough, was what happened right at the beginning.
Yeah, very powerful.
And then I did all this wonderful stuff on top of that, like later.
Yeah. And there's
So
going to be a big
that was a
acclamation.
huge liberation for me, like a quantum leap in personal growth.
Yeah, I love that. And there's going to be a period of acclimation, right? That's why in some ways the question is asked, why don't we get Torah the day after we leave Egypt? And we're not ready. We have to wander in the desert. And we'll take these 7 weeks metaphorically to reach Sinai, to receive that Torah. But the kind of acculturation to freedom is not immediate. And in some ways, we're still learning how to be free. Our liturgy kind of touches on that on a daily basis. Yeah, thanks, Judy, for sharing that. I think we've all kind of been navigated some of that, like all the shoulds, and then the realizations of we're alive. We're already here. That's significant. Thank you. Linda.
That's also the realization that coming out of this and beginning to go back into whatever is going to be the new normal, that we have had the power to choose what to do, as Judy was just saying, and we can choose what we want to get involved with and how much effort and how much time, without perhaps getting back to the level of just feeling we never have enough time because we're so overcommitted.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. So let's look at that. And this is just a statement about the egg, because actually the egg is never blessed. There's not a ritual moment for the egg, which is unique. Of all the things on the Seder plate, there's no like egg blessing. Blessing for an egg is actually shehakol nihye bidvaro, which is for mixtures. But symbolically, I just wanted to kind of have a record that it's a reminder of the sacrifice, the sacrificial offering called Chagiga. And it's also about the circle of life and the flow between death and rebirth and springtime. So I wanted to think about the egg, the Beitzah, from the perspective of Elijah. And does somebody feel connected to Elijah and wants to take us through this text? Yeah, Rob, please. So if you want to read the verse from Malachi, and then we'll look at Elie Wiesel's thoughts.
Elijah shall reconcile parents with children and children with their parents, so that when I come, I do not strike the whole land with utter destruction.
Great. And so the imagery around Eliyahu Hanavi. Elijah the prophet is really of a peacemaker, specifically between parents and kids. And Elijah, of course, has a prominent place at the baby namings and circumcision. Great. And so let's hear from one of our giant theologians, Elie Wiesel. Go ahead, Rob.
We have no better defender in heaven than Elijah. He is the ultimate witness, the chronicler, the historian of Jewish distress. He is the memory of the Jewish people.
Yeah. So what do you make of this, especially coming from Professor Wiesel?
Well, the role model is Elijah that we should be looking toward for reconciliation. And he should know. I mean, look, all that he had to go through to reconcile himself and, have faith again with all the destruction that was in his life. Remarkable man. He is an inspiration.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I still remember I was in Boston and had the privilege to hear him teach, and oh my gosh, talk about a practitioner of faith through it all. So here we have this Beitzah, and in that way, the fact that we don't have a particular blessing for the egg, I think is also kind of accentuates this connection to Elijah. Elijah is not the obvious pick. There's multiple, endless stories really about Elijah showing up at our door in the guise of, you name it, other than who we would guess Elijah to be. And Pesach is really about almost the Elijah within each of us, the heralder of change and hope, the end of the Seder, right? When we rise and open the door to welcome in Elijah, that kind of empty place set and cup that I remember as a kid, like watching basically the entire Seder because the level would go down. Right? This kind of ominous, mysterious potential. What's coming up for Chris? What are you thinking about with this Elijah? Any personal Elijah connections?
Sorry about that. It was below the screen and I couldn't unmute. No, I was just thinking about that because that was not what I was expecting to be part of the passages. So I was actually thinking of a personal connection I have with the family. But with so that I kind of got distracted actually because of that. But yeah, I'd have to think about that a little bit more.
No, distractions are often where it's at. So stay with that.
Yeah. No, it was a distraction with the Wiesel family. So that's what I just started thinking about that. But not my family. Yeah, I think I just have to think more about the egg in that. Like that was just not my wavelength.
Yeah. No, and I'm throwing some different sort of ideas and things just to freshen all of our thoughts about it.
Yeah, no, it's good to think, but it's good to prompt thoughts like that.
Great. Yeah, Sophia, Tom.
I was just going to ask the passage about that Elijah asks essentially that we reconcile with our parents and parents with children. So that when Elijah comes, Elijah does not strike the whole land with utter destruction. And I'm thinking about like this, like the sanctity, the sacredness of family, of like units of community kind of holding together and reconciling like our own internal conflicts so that we can withstand, I don't know what destruction is brought. I'm not super, yeah, I don't know what that's in reference to, I guess. So I think I'm missing some pieces there, but thinking about that, like the resilience, the necessity of being like tightly knit in community and in family.
Yeah, absolutely. And Pesach, right? If it doesn't happen at the Pesach at the Seder table, you know, who knows where it's going to happen. So yeah, just, I mean, the feat for families to come together. Passover is the most celebrated of all Jewish holidays, and it's the most prominently like a family, you know, dinner table holiday. So yeah, and you're sitting around there talking about struggle. Tom, did you want to share?
I was tying together a couple things. I think you asked earlier about how were we using this year, and I've been using the year as an opportunity to take more time and energy toward studying Kabbalah, mysticism, as well as scripture. And I think that the reason I'm doing it ties in with this notion of Elijah coming to visit us in a variety of forms. And as I'm cleaning up my own internal act, as I'm looking for her name, Sophia was just saying, allows me or gives me the opportunity and the freedom to interact with or greet people, open my mouth to, open my door to whatever appears in front of me. And so.
Beautiful. Absolutely. And one of my beloved teachers, contemporary giant who's since passed away, but Rabbi Harold Schulweis in Los Angeles of blessed memory, would say that not only do we have to open the door for Elijah, but in fact, we have to go out and bring Elijah in. And, you know, it's a very strong charge. He created, big part of creating World Watch, and Sova and Mazon, and organizations that really went out to create change, not just, you know, wanted change.
I'm afraid I'm going to be, I've set myself up
nice
to have this year provide me a structured opportunity with immediate feedback, or including immediate feedback on just what you're saying, going out into the world, not just sitting in my study and studying and praying and meditating, but actually, you said, pray with your feet. Go out and involve yourself in some kind of social action.
Amen. Amen.
Terrifies me, but it's around the corner.
It could be the best terror you've ever known.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there is a tradition I just wanted to mention of inviting everyone to help fill up Elijah's cup. So both Kos Eliyahu and Kos Miriam, the cup of Elijah and the cup of Miriam, are two spaces really for creativity around freedom to, freedom from, water, justice. You know, you can go in a million directions with those tools. And the last tool that we'll look at, the last kind of prop to expound upon is Carpus. And if you would like to put into the chat, what does hope mean for you this year? Or dream about it later, you're welcome. And this is just a note, Pesach is Chag HaAviv, the holiday of Aviv, of spring. And you're probably seeing the trees begin to blossom, and you know, anything can be used for Carpus. Some people actually make a big deal out of Carpus and basically create a whole crudité that so no one starves before the meal. So it's another opportunity to think about how to kind of keep everybody sane. And we'll go ahead and look at Carpus, this idea of this green leafy vegetable, right, that's dipped in the salt water. And last week we looked at the salt water more extensively, about the juxtaposition between the tears and the life force, and dipping that life force into those tears. So we'll read this poem together. Does anyone like to read a poem? This is Rabbi Naomi Levy in Los Angeles, contemporary poet and thinker, founder of a wonderful shul called Neshuva. And it really speaks to, she wrote this last year at the beginning of Corona. Let's see if I can see.
I'll read it.
Great, Joanne, thank you. Let me.
I don't have it all up here.
Yeah, so it's titled, and this comes back to Sophia's great thought at the very opening of what is Dayenu. So titled Dayenu, Enough, God. And I'll scroll as you read.
Okay, got it. Let those who are ill find healing, Dayenu. Let our worries be calmed, Dayenu. Let the weak and the vulnerable be protected, Dayenu. Let all healers find paths to bring healing, Dayenu. Let scientists grasp a higher knowing that will lead to a cure, Dayenu. Let there be an end to this plague, God, Dayenu. Fill our hearts with hope and our souls with faith, our bodies with health and our homes with love. Unite our world to bring on a day of freedom. Let the seeds of rebirth take root tonight and grow in blessings in your light. Dayenu, enough, God. Amen.
Amen. So that's what we're after. And, you know, this Carpus is really this sprout of possibility, this sprout of hope, this kind of seed of potential. You know, it's not a tree, it's not Tu B'Shvat, it's not the whole Gansa Megillah. It's just this tender liminal sprig, survivor. So let's, I see we just have a few more minutes, but what's coming up for you all? What are you kind of taking away? Any thoughts, remaining questions? And while those are coming, let me also just put into the chat. This is a way to, did anyone have any thoughts or questions or comments before I just kind of? Joseph?
I love all the quotes that you put in there, because it did make you think a lot about things that you wouldn't normally think about. So I just wanted to thank you for so thoughtfully putting everything together for us.
Oh, of course. Yeah, pleasure. Joseph, what's shaking? What are you feeling about this?
Oh, there's just a lot going on in our world, and it's spring, things are emerging, things are starting to burst forth, and Passover is coming up. Hannah and I are kind of gearing up now. We lived in our motorhome for 30 months and until last October, and now we're living in a 400 square foot place that seems luxuriously large after that, but we're getting ready to pack things up and get out of here before it gets too hot at the end of next month, and there's a lot to do to prepare for that. So it's good to be with you guys and learn about this stuff together.
Yeah, the
Can I
journey's never
say
done.
that this last year has been, as you were speaking, thinking about all the letting go that we lived in stick houses for so many years. And so for the last 30 plus months, we've been traveling, and we ended up in the desert. And we spent our first Passover away from home in the desert 2.5 years ago. And here we are coming into a new Passover and have let go of so much. And there's so much newness. So this freedom for me is freedom from stuff, from whatever I was holding on to because it was familiar.
Yeah.
And the desert's taken on a special meaning to us now. And the freedom to move forward then without the hindrances of all of those old things and learn new things. Some of the things are far less traditional than other people that I've sat in front of and learned from, and I've appreciated that. It opens my mind to new thoughts. And thank you.
Thank you. That's a perfect note to end on, really, is the reminder about that desert space. So we leave Egypt, that narrow space, and enter the expansive space of the wilderness. And I think if I were to just say what I'm after is that wilderness.
That's a nice way of saying that.
That way of being in the expansiveness of the desert. Yeah. Good, everybody. Well, thank you all so much for being here and sharing. And I wish you all a Zisin Pesach, a sweet Pesach, as our Yiddish family would say. And thank you for being with us.
Great to meet you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good job, everybody.
Thank you.
Take
We look
care.
forward to seeing you this summer, Rabbi.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, truck on by.
We will be down.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jody.